In chess, how can you find and exploit weak squares? Imagine your opponent's position as a fortress with vulnerable spots. Spotting these weak squares is like finding the cracks in their defenses. Weak squares are spots that your opponent cannot easily defend or control with pawns. These squares often appear after pawn moves that leave holes or gaps behind them. For example, if your opponent pushes a pawn forward or exchanges pawns, it might leave behind an unguarded square. Sometimes, losing a bishop that normally controls certain color complexes also creates weak squares. To find these, look for squares that are not protected by pawns or other pieces. These are prime spots for your pieces to settle in. Knights are especially good at occupying weak squares because they can jump over pawns and stand on outposts. An outpost is a square protected by pawns and immune to attack by enemy pawns. Once you identify a weak square, you can place a piece there to control it. Putting a knight on a weak square makes it a stronghold that your opponent struggles to dislodge. You can also threaten to exchange or remove the defender of that square to increase your control. Sometimes, provoking your opponent to make pawn moves that create new weaknesses can be very effective. For example, pushing a pawn to attack a piece might force them to weaken their structure. Fixing weaknesses by advancing your own pawns can also make weak squares more permanent. If you see a weak square that your opponent cannot easily defend, consider sacrificing material to open lines or create lasting weaknesses. For instance, an exchange sacrifice can open a file or diagonal that your pieces can use to infiltrate. Controlling weak squares in the middle game gives you a strategic advantage. It allows your pieces to infiltrate your opponent's position, restrict their mobility, and set up attacking chances. Good players often prioritize controlling these squares even if it costs some material because the long-term benefits outweigh the immediate loss. Recognizing weak squares helps you plan piece placement, pawn breaks, and exchanges that maximize your position. By focusing on these outposts, you create pressure points that can lead to winning attacks or better endgames. So, always keep an eye on the pawn structure and look for those unguarded squares. They are your gateways to gaining a positional edge and turning the game in your favor.